this is Miss Andre with Not Another Homeschool Vlog. You've got questions, I've got tea. Let's do this. I'm looking for a homeschool orchestra or band for my children. Yes, I know there are lots of private lessons opportunities for instruments, but the opportunity to practice in a concert orchestra band would be lovely. Um, I'm especially looking for younger children. So, this is important, especially in middle school. You'll notice that public middle schools supply opportunities for band and orchestra and group music. Um, Individual lessons are good, but working together in a group setting, which is what the goal is when you're learning music, is very important. Where I live, and in most large cities, like I'm in metro Atlanta, which means that within a half hour drive, I'm pretty sure I could find orchestras for my kids. Um, I didn't use the orchestras, the homeschool orchestras, when my kids were homeschooling because I'm not that type of homeschooler. Most of the two orchestras that I knew about were Christian orchestras, and they were very serious about being Christian orchestras. And I just wanted my children to get that environment and not to also get preached at. That's what we have church for. So that was my decision to not use those orchestras. My kids actually, their instrument of choice was piano, so they didn't really need orchestra. They did just keep the private music lessons. Most of the time, those were in our home. Sometimes I took them elsewhere for those lessons. Um, but they did belong to a homeschool program that did music. My children were both in choirs. So they had their group music instructors from choirs. And while the program we used for that was also Christian, it was a little more ratcheted down, a little more like all types of Christians and people invited at that time. That program has since changed. But so, just go on to the message groups for your area, the homeschool message groups for your area, and just ask the question. You will find music instruction. And then you need to go and talk to the people who lead um, each music instruction program and get familiar with their mission. If their mission is to honor God through music, I mean, that's nice, that's fine. If it's to, if it goes further than that and it becomes a whole religious experience, that's up to you whether you want that or not. For me, for everything that my kids did to be connected to religion was too much. And I felt it would drive them away from religion if we overloaded them in everything. And honestly, I like secular programs um, because my kids are getting to meet all kinds of people. So that's up to you. And that's not what the question was. The question was, how do I find a homeschool orchestra or band? It's not hard. Just go to the biggest city near you, join a homeschool message board of that biggest city near you, and ask the question. And what you might find is that there's one a few miles from your house, because they'll say, hey, out in here there's one, here there's one. Or you might find that you have to drive a half hour. If it's only once a week, it might absolutely be worth it. I know kids who were in my kids' choir program, but they also um, were in another choir 30 minutes away because they were in an Atlanta children's choir. So you can even find yourself in a couple of different choirs or orchestras or bands. And if you want an informal band like a garage band, just say, hey, my kid wants to form a band, and you will be absolutely inundated with that. For example, in my area, let's see, there's one in my city. There's one out in Athens. Um, there's Joyful Noise Homeschool Band. There's Athens Area Homeschool Band. There's Forsyth Youth Orchestra. There's North Metro Music Education. There's Bravo Homeschool Strings. There's Rome Youth Symphony Orchestra. There's a place called Hype that has a children's orchestra. And then there's also non homeschool orchestras that are after school types for all kids. So I hope I answered that question. It's not that hard to find. You can find it. How do you go about telling places like your child's doctor or dental office that your child is homeschooled and not in a public school setting anymore without any issues? So this person had a doctor bristle at her and make snide comments and things about homeschooling. Yeah, we went through that. Um, Look, I'm compulsively honest. So when the doctor says, because the doctor asks these questions, how are your kids doing in school? I just say they homeschool. And when one doctor fired me as a patient, and I was like, okay. And it was just, I just got a letter that said, don't come back. Um, you aren't following or raising your children the way that we think is best for their health. And I think they were talking about mental health. And I was just like, fine. There are going to be doctors who say, your children need more socialization, you're a bad parent, your children are surprisingly healthy, even though you homeschool, your children are surprisingly smart, even though you homeschool. And whenever I got any kind of shade whatsoever from a doctor, I just bounced. I am not married to you. You can't tell me what to do. I mean, that's basically the net of how I felt about it. So I guess when my kids were like 12 and 14, I found a doctor. And we didn't agree with everything eye to eye, but she had no problem with us homeschooling, so we kept her. And honestly, my daughter kept going past 18, and the doctor was like, "You're a woman now. Can you go to a woman doctor?" But when they asked about school and we said we homeschool, she was like, "Oh, good. We can have weekday morning appointments, and we don't have to work around school schedule." And I was like, "Yes," and she was like, "Yes," and we're like, "Yay!" And she always asked me how homeschooling was going. She always asked me what math the children, were up to at this point, what they were doing in math. And when we got close to graduation time, she asked about college. And my daughter was 15. And she said, she asked, took care of my daughter. They always did a mental health advisory to make sure that they weren't dealing with depression, because depression is really huge these days. And then she would try to get me to leave the room so that she could talk to my daughter privately, but my daughter was like, "I have no secrets from my mom. My mom could stay." So I'd excuse myself for 5 minutes and come back because my daughter would get very upset if I left the room. But the question was, how's your homeschooling going? How close are you to finished? And my daughter was 15, and we're like, we're doing geometry right now. We already did algebra 1 and algebra 2, and this is the science I'm doing. In the homeschool program I'm in, I'm actually a junior. And she was like, "Wow, so are you going to college?" And I chimed in and I said, because she's so young, I really want her to take a gap year. And the doctor looked at me and said, "If she's ready for college, she's ready for college." And that really got me thinking that I shouldn't hold her back just because of her age. If she has the smarts, she has the smarts. And that's why my daughter graduated homeschool at 16 and started college um, weeks after turning 17, because the doctor was pro homeschooling and pro accelerated education and encouraged that greatly in our family. So if your doctor's giving you a hard time, if your dentist is giving you a hard time, fire them. And once again, go on the message boards, the homeschool message boards, and ask who has a doctor. Ask who has a doctor, a dentist, or whatever medical professional you need that is homeschool friendly, because they exist. No worries.